But yeah, there's just so much fascination around Katie Johnson because she's never come forward again. And so I had to keep digging. So I called the lawyers. I called Lisa Bloom. She didn't get back to me. I called Thomas Meagher. He didn't get back to me. I reached out to Evan Goldman. He didn't get back to me. But I did hear from one of Katie Johnson's lawyers, Cheney Mason. And he spoke to me for the first time in a decade, nearly a decade. He is telling the story of his client as much as he can tell. There's no doubt in my mind that she told the truth of everything that's in her lawsuit, period. That's right. He said, there is no doubt in my mind she told the truth. Now, Katie Johnson, it's almost a mythical figure at this point because she has never come forward again. I have never met her. I am not planning to go find her. I think if she wants to come forward, that's up to her.
Today, we're going to take a look at one of the most poignant, curious, and mysterious lawsuits ever filed against Mr. Donald J. Trump. This occurred prior to his first term as U.S. President. Jeffrey Epstein, who clearly does not need an introduction as to his nefarious character, was listed as Trump's co-defendant. Again, we repeat, this was just prior to Mr. Trump's first term as U.S. President. The lawsuit then vanished. The first of the lawsuits was filed pro se in California. The plaintiff, presumably using a pseudonym, was Katie Johnson. The second lawsuit followed. In this one, Ms. Johnson engaged lawyers to represent her. Both lawsuits were filed just a few months, and then just weeks, prior to the 2016 presidential elections. After the pro se lawsuit transformed into the lawyer-represented lawsuit, several events unfolded abruptly. A massive international press conference was canceled. The physical introduction of Katie Johnson to the public, for the first time, was canceled. Ms. Johnson's lawyer made a sudden, brief statement to the many journalists who had gathered for the press conference and a public statement by Ms. Johnson. Then, not so shockingly, Katie Johnson and her father disappeared completely. All communication ceased between Ms. Johnson and her attorney. Ultimately, Ms. Johnson, her father, and the two Jane Doe witnesses were never heard from again in the public eye. While there are countless theories regarding the civil lawsuits wherein Ms. Johnson was the plaintiff, whether in pro per or represented by counsel, certain truths speak for themselves. Regardless of one's political affiliation, religious affiliation, any level of skepticism, or journalist celebrity status, these truths are completely undeniable. The U.S. Federal District Court System's main online case database, called PACER, does in fact show two cases filed against Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein as co-defendants. These lawsuits contain, in summary, the same accusations. They describe the same location of the events noted therein. Overall, they include the same description of the plaintiff, the two defendants, and the actions that allegedly occurred during those events. Hence, we are clearly looking at the same plaintiff and the same defendants. This was a litigation on opposing sides. The lawsuit went far beyond the plaintiff seeking solely financial damages. It addressed the horrendous, detailed, graphic acts committed against her, and those in which she was forced to participate under threat. The first lawsuit was clearly filed pro se, with Katie Johnson as the plaintiff. It was filed on April 26, 2016, in the United States District Court, Central District of California. The second case listed the plaintiff as Jane Doe. Katie Johnson was clearly proceeding under a pseudonym. The defendants were Donald Trump and Jeffrey E. Epstein. This case was filed on June 20, 2016, just a few months after the first lawsuit. It was clearly the same legal matter. However, this second complaint was filed in a completely different federal district court jurisdiction than the first. It was written and filed with Ms. Johnson being represented by a New York bar-certified attorney. We present to you both of Ms. Johnson's lawsuits against Donald J. Trump and Jeffrey E. Epstein. The first was filed pro se, also known as in pro per. It was clearly written by Ms. Johnson alone, or with limited formal legal assistance. It is unquestionable that the second lawsuit was filed in the appropriate U.S. District Court. This court corresponded with and had simultaneous jurisdiction over Ms. Johnson's complaint, that being New York State. Both Mr. Trump and Mr. Epstein were listed as residents there. Ms. Johnson was a resident of the state of California, so the first of the two lawsuits was filed in her court of legal jurisdiction. One cannot help but note the differences, with even a cursory, non-legally educated glance at the two complaints. The second lawsuit shows and expands upon considerably more legal claims against the two defendants. In their written context, these claims delve into and demonstrate much greater depth and professionalism. This applies to the details of the entire matter in and of itself. To return to the many theories, denials, affirmations, conflicts, and disputes, ultimately, Ms. Johnson's lawsuits vanished in the public eye. Aside from a few mentions, nearly completely buried on social media, they faded. Even some of those social media posts resurface from time to time. They gain large viewerships on the channels of certain social media influencers. Yet the abrupt dismissal by Ms. Johnson, via her attorney, of her second lawsuit stands out. This occurred despite the accompanying testimonials of the witnesses. Those witness statements further authenticated and corroborated Ms. Johnson's claims. Other events raise questions as well. There was the abrupt cancellation of Ms. Johnson's first ever press conference. There were various comments made by Ms. Johnson's attorney when the press conference was abruptly canceled at the last minute. There were also comments made by Ms. Johnson's attorney after Ms. Johnson and her father literally disappeared, after Ms. Johnson dropped her case. All of this brings up many questions. No one of any authority, judicial or political, is addressing them, nor is any journalist, either on social media or in mainstream media, taking even a moment of the general public's time to continue delving into this and getting to the bottom of it. That is what we are doing via this video presentation. It is accompanied by Ms. Johnson's two lawsuits themselves. We repeat again, these are unredacted and legally acquired. They are free of opinion, but contain only the legal documents themselves. Before your very own eyes, in this particular video as well, we are including other media citations. These pertain directly to this case. They contain shocking, consistent, and nearly unbelievable information. We are presenting this evidence for the public's consumption and your own study. It is uncensored and unfiltered. It is non-political and non-partisan. At this particular moment in history, only 11 months into President Donald J. Trump's second term as U.S. President, the infighting in the GOP is increasing. It is becoming harder and harder to follow as the days pass. The increase in worldwide military actions initiated by Trump's 2.0 administration is growing, in truth and fact. This holds despite any official statements to the contrary. There is also fracturing and infighting in the MAGA world. The same kind of fracturing and infighting is occurring and increasing even in the general population's unofficial conservative communities.
I came to this interview on my free will. No, there was nothing promised to me for doing this interview.
Excellent.
Yes, everything that I say at this interview will be the truth. I met Donald Trump at some parties I attend that I was working for Mr. Jeffrey Epstein. There was about 3 or 4 times that I had encounters with Donald Trump. I was 13. The first time that I met Donald Trump was at a party at Jeffrey Epstein's mansion. There was an orgy going on, and he was kind of watching off in the distance, and he basically asked if I could come over and give him a hand job. And at first, I wasn't very comfortable with it. This was like my first party, and I didn't think that was my responsibility. But my recruiter told me that I needed to do it, so I agreed to. And then he, I began to. Sorry, this is a little difficult, but before I gave him a hand job, he kind of slapped my hand away and said, you need to use a glove. And the recruiter, he ran over and handed me a glove and said, no one touches Mr. Trump's penis without a glove. So I needed to use a glove. I gave him a hand job, and then immediately after, he had an orgasm, he left, and I didn't see him again at that party. Jeffrey Epstein is a billionaire friend of Donald Trump's that was responsible for throwing the sex parties. I originally came to New York trying to be a model, and in my travels I met a girl named Tiffany there who was very interested in me and said that that's what she did, is that she helped girls get what they wanted, and she could help me get into modeling, that she knew a lot of people that were higher ups and that it would be no problem. And so that's why, but I would just basically have to come model at a couple of events and meet some people. There would be no sweat. So, of course I went, that sounded like no big deal. And she was recruiting the girls to come to these parties. And they all looked, most of them were, my age. There was, maybe a couple girls that were maybe 14 or 15, but it seemed to me like we were all very young, so. Okay. Jeffrey Epstein knew that I was 13 years old. When he interviewed me, he asked me to get down to my bra, just my panties, and I thought that was weird, but modeling, maybe it was something about my figure. And he asked that I give him a massage. So and then he asked me my age. He asked me, and I told him, told him that I was 13. I told him why I was there. And he basically said, well, you'll do, I'm sure that you'll fit pretty nicely here. And then he tried to basically slip himself inside of me, and I pushed him away, and I said, because at that point in time I still believed that there was models and then there was the girls that did that. Like, I thought there was a separation. So I told him that I wasn't interested in that, but he said that I would do. And as far as Donald Trump, he knew that I was 13, and I believe that Tiffany told him he seemed to take a liking to me because I was I was so young, and I was also a virgin. So I don't know. It seemed like he wasn't really into having girls that were liked by the other guys. He kind of, the whole glove. He kind of liked things to be his first. If that, for lack of a better term, but he was the one who wanted to get to a girl before everyone else did. Donald Trump knew that I was 13 because the first night that I was there, Tiffany actually suggested that she had a whole bunch of different wigs, and I expressed interest in them. I always told her that I would love to walk around with blue hair, and so I tried some on, and there was a blonde wig that she said that looked great on me. So I wore that wig, and Donald Trump had specifically asked about me because I remind him of his daughter, and she said, well, she's 13 as well. So he knew the first time that he saw me, but he took a liking to me because I look like his daughter. The reason I'm coming out now is when it happened originally, I just wanted to forget about the whole incident. And when I saw that he was running for president, I felt that it was my responsibility to come out and tell our country what kind of man this person is. I don't think that he should even be the dog catcher, let alone running the greatest country in the world. After I met Tiffany at the bus station, she took me to, basically went to her house, her apartment, and got ready. I put on a blonde wig because it seemed fun to pretend to be someone different, but we went to the party that I was basically interviewing for, and Jeffrey Epstein was the one that was running the party. He had a quick meeting with everyone that was employed there, and then he had a private interview with me. The first time that I met Jeffrey Epstein, he did try to force himself inside of me without getting the go-ahead or anything, and then it was probably about the third or fourth party is when he basically forced. It was another massage, and it was basically like it wasn't sex, but there was penetration, and I told him that I didn't want that, but he kind of got a little irritated. So I don't know. There was something about him that I guess I kind of held him I held a lot of resentment towards him. By that time that happened, I kind of.
Do not discard this brief video as a YouTube short, an X social media video, or a TikTok rant video that will come and go as a one-hit wonder. Look at this video a few times, even 10 times. Listen to each of the words spoken as these images and clips of legal documents, articles, and statements fly before your eyes. Then, with patience, read each lawsuit, each article, and each statement made in their entirety. This is a task that might take you no more than a single hour. Do this all by avoiding political, social media, mainstream media, and other third-party opinion statements, whether written or spoken. Then determine for yourself the validity of Ms. Johnson's lawsuits. Consider the claims contained therein. Reflect on the graphic, horrific details contained therein. Share this information, the entirety of it. Do not share it in slivered, confusing, psyop-designed pieces, but as an entire package. Do so with everyone you know, whether that be a neighbor, a friend, a colleague, a journalist, a lawyer, or even, perhaps especially, your government representatives. While doing so, ask both yourself and the recipients with whom you share this package to take the brief calendar time to look deeply into this matter. Get to the bottom of it. The case and circumstances of Katie Johnson. If one is familiar with any case surrounding violent acts of sexual and physical violence committed by political and diplomatic powerhouses, often referred to as globalists, is a prime, documented example. It shows how such cases, even when they are in the process of being legally adjudicated in a federal district court, have the tendency to just go away. They fade into the brainwashed, 10-second attention span capacity of the average human being. Go old school on this one. You will have no choice but to wake up. Despite the obvious, blatant, perpetual, time-devouring, and taxpayer money-consuming media manipulation, political strategy, blackmail, and payoffs, the subject of Jeffrey Epstein remains frequent in social media, mainstream media, political circles, and on Capitol Hill. Many individuals who voted for Donald J. Trump are increasingly disappointed with how things have unfolded since he took office in his second term as U.S. president. Rumors circulate about alleged deep state persons inside Trump's own current administration. These insiders are said to be trying to push him out sooner rather than later. Many claim that such Trump insiders include Attorney General Pam Bondi and White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, among others, whether legally or otherwise. Despite all of that, and despite the many other allegations against Jeffrey Epstein and President Trump regarding sexually related crimes, why is the case and subject of Katie Johnson buried so quickly? These crimes date back many decades. They include first-person testimony, actual lawsuits that were won, and proof of out-of-court settlements. No matter how many times the Katie Johnson case appears in the media, predominantly only in social media at this point, it vanishes faster than a sandcastle at high tide during a massive hurricane. Even lawyers and other professionals, let's call them educated people, have weighed in on this. These individuals were in no way parties to the case of Katie Johnson. They do not know the plaintiff, the witnesses, or the defendants. Yet they have been quoted as stating that certain theories seem unlikely. For instance, some suggest that Katie Johnson's allegations and lawsuits were a last-minute effort by the Democrats. Trump was competing against them in the November 2016 elections. The goal, according to this view, was to take down Trump in the 11th hour of a long, fierce presidential campaign. However, these professionals admit, via their many statements, that the detail, coherence, and consistency of the facts in Katie Johnson's legal documentation make it extremely improbable. It was not a political show. It was not a DNC attack on Trump to keep him from taking the White House for the first time. Most poignantly, the entire story of Katie Johnson, even under a pseudonym, could not have been a creation of any kind of fiction. The theories surrounding what happened to Katie Johnson after she dropped her second attorney-represented lawsuit are both shocking and disturbing. This occurred just weeks before the 2016 presidential elections. These theories deserve to be briefly noted and analyzed. Some critical questions and important points of inquiry may include the following. Was this a DNC fabrication to take down Mr. Trump via destruction of his moral character? Perhaps the DNC, via a third party or a shell corporation, paid an absolute fortune to the alleged Katie Johnson, her alleged father, and the alleged witnesses. At that time, it wasn't yet clear that Trump was going to win as the final months of the campaign passed. That theory appears very weak. If this entire scandal had been a political takedown fabrication, surely the DNC, or any organization or entity wishing to end Mr. Trump's chances at winning the 2016 elections, would have gone the full 10 rounds. They would have continued until Mr. Trump was literally, politically, and morally KO'd. In that scenario, Hillary Clinton would unquestionably have become the 45th president of the USA. Were the facts contained within Katie Johnson's lawsuits so utterly true and indefensible that Mr. Donald Trump and or Mr. Epstein paid off Ms. Johnson, her father, and the two witnesses? This would involve an obscenely enormous amount of money. Ms. Johnson, her father, and the witnesses might have been satisfied enough with countless financial riches to change their names, move to unknown locations, and sign detailed non-disclosure agreements. This would make it legally impossible for the case to ever see a courtroom and actual discovery. That is a potential scenario. However, it leaves a question. Other legal cases, specifically sexually related ones, involving adult or minor plaintiffs had been documented up to that time. Mr. Trump and Mr. Epstein had settled those out of court, but those did not involve such serious, grave allegations. Why then would Donald Trump and or Jeffrey Epstein pay off at least 4 individuals? These include the alleged victim, the victim's father, and 2 separate witnesses. Even if this was the true result of how the case went away, more questions remain. How much was paid? Through what means? Was it via a third party or a lawyer? How is it possible that, despite the amount of money paid, even if it was $100 million, these 4 primary persons have stayed silent? They may or may not have received payoffs or settlement money, whatever term one wishes to use. Now, after nearly 10 years since a potential legal settlement, consider the state of the world at this present time. There is mass, ever-growing chaos and controversy surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. His very name, his life, the circumstances of his death, and the consistent subject of Epstein are at an all-time high in political, media, and social media circles. Why have none of these 4 individuals, even via a third party, a courageous journalist, an anonymous public drop, or a sudden live interview, resisted the temptation to bring the full truth of this particular case to light? This holds true no matter how much money was paid to them. If Katie Johnson's allegations contained within her lawsuits were in any manner false, why did neither Mr. Epstein nor, especially, Mr. Trump ever sue her for defamation? Consider the gravity of the accusations. Mr. Trump and Mr. Epstein were accused of violent sex crimes against a minor in this particular case. Mr. Trump won the 2016 presidential elections just months after the second lawsuit was filed and then withdrawn. Keep in mind that this was approximately 2.5 years prior to Jeffrey Epstein's final arrest in 2019, just prior to his alleged suicide. Mr. Trump had just become the most powerful person in the free world. He has a tendency to file lawsuits of many kinds, including those for defamation. In near conclusion of our analysis, we leave you, the spectator of this video and the reader of these documents, to consider the following. All of these documents are primarily unredacted. We also leave you to read what else is contained in our release. You can find more for yourself regarding this case. All of this is not opinion but rather fact-based, documented evidence. One theory has floated around regarding Katie Johnson, her father, and the 2 witnesses. People seem to bring it up from time to time. What is that theory? Were Katie and her father, as per the statements of Katie's lawyer, so absolutely terrified by the threats they allegedly received for filing her lawsuit that they literally ran for the hills in the middle of the night? Did they hide themselves on a mountaintop or in a cave? Will they forever keep themselves hidden and literally anonymous? Such a theory seems way outside of reality. Consider what Katie Johnson allegedly suffered at the hands of 2 of the most powerful men in the world. This holds despite Epstein's alleged status of being dead and Trump now being US president for the second time. In conclusion of our analysis, numerous lawyers, journalists, and many in the public have postulated about this. They are aware of Katie Johnson's case. They look deeply into the many theories as to why Katie Johnson vanished in the abrupt manner in which she did. Consider her massive, detailed, documented lawsuit. Again, we repeat, why would Katie herself, her father, and the two witnesses just vanish from one day to the next? That leaves us with a theory that very few even dare to postulate in the current social, media, and political climate. Were the plaintiff, her father, and the two primary witnesses scared off, paid off, or literally unalived into silence? If such a horrific truth as their being unalived is even a theory with a modicum of possibility, why is no one investigating? This is one of the most serious lawsuits ever filed against one of the most well-known, now-deceased sex offenders and child traffickers in the world, despite his allegedly dying from suicide. But more importantly, and much more shockingly, if there is even a hint of the most minuscule modicum of truth to the possibility that any actual harm, let alone death, came to Katie, her father, and the two witnesses, why has no one investigated since 2016? Why is no one in the present day legally digging into what happened to the parties in this case? In particular, President Trump did not win the 2020 elections. During the entire four-year Biden term as president, why did no alleged Trump hater pursue this horrifically serious matter? This is a legal case involving a former president and a notorious co-defendant. Epstein was then deceased, but still unquestionably guilty as a sex trafficker, rapist, pedophile, child pornographer, blackmailer, and many other horrible, undeniable truths in his criminal legal file and public persona. Ultimate truth is bound to come out someday, with absolutely all the facts and not a millimeter of gray involved. By exposing what we are exposing, when and how we are exposing it, we believe that day of total transparency is literally upon us. If not, it is on an extremely fast-approaching horizon. This is not a witch hunt. This is not a partisan issue. This is all about protecting all of the children, whether those children are boys or girls, from any and all predators. It does not matter how rich or how globally powerful they are. It does not matter what political and/or diplomatic position of power the perpetrators hold in this world.